How I discovered TV tropes. I think it all started back when I was probably in high school, or at least during my early years, where I was just going through the internet, just looking up random stuff, because that's what I like to do during my free time. However, in this particular case, I was interested in anything related to anime or and by extension manga because, well, you could say I was sort of a fan of them. Well, not to the point where I joined any particular fandoms, but I was always interested in how they worked and why they were so popular in culture, especially in Western culture. So I ended up looking up various patterns or even cliches or basically any kind of cinematic or literary device that I could find. And one particular phrase that came up was "This is unforgivable" or you will not be forgiven," as it was the one thing that stuck out to me out of all the usual phrases that like Japanese culture media would portray. Yeah, especially if it was "I won't" or "I'll never forgive you," because from what I heard, Japanese culture is a very serious threat to say whenever you get really mad at someone, especially if the person who wronged you really did something that truly was unforgivable. And as a result, I just wanted to see what it would sound like in English, or at least from the various translations I could find. And I happened to come across this particular article that was literally called "This is Unforgivable." And as a result, I looked it up and it had a list of all the various moments or scenes that happen, and not only in anime and manga, but also in cartoons or video games, books, or even movies, like both animated and live action. And that's when I started to become interested in TV tropes. And when I looked into TV tropes, I actually found out that it was originally supposed to be a sort of not exactly a forum, but it was supposed to be a sort of wiki, like as in Wikipedia, that talked about Buffy the Vampire Slayer of all things, because that's where they got its origins, as they were doing a sort of, I guess, critique or analyses of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as well as the franchise's various other forms of spin-offs or continuities, and even the comic book adaptations. And as a result, I started to become more interested in TV tropes after that, and I even sometimes look up various cinematic or literary devices, or tropes as they would call it, to do some research on my own regarding writing, as that was the main goal that I wanted to do in the future. As you could say, my dream or my long-term goal is to become a writer, or at least an author, as I want to create stories of my own, not just to entertain people, but to also inspire them, or at least provide some form of moral lesson. Well, not to be too preachy or anything, but it's kind of like my own Aesop, you could say, because I wanted to at least help teach, especially younger or even newer generations, about what life is really like, and not just something limited to what you see on TV or read in comics or watch even in movies, where most of the time the plots that tend to be portrayed in those stories, as well as the characters and even the settings, sometimes don't make sense, or they tend to come across as either too cliche or just really unrealistic to the point where people will unfortunately copy them and think that they're real. So I wanted to try my own hand at subverting or even outright averting those kinds of cliches or scenarios, while also trying to put my own take or spin on whatever trope came my way. Yeah, funny thing is, I actually met some people who knew about TV tropes as well, which made it glad. And also, fun fact, Overly Sarcastic Productions, one of the main YouTube series that I watched, they actually got their start from TV tropes. And even Red, who is one of the main narrators, or I guess creators of the show, she actually, well, from what I found out from a live stream that she did, where she actually got her name Red from another part in TV tropes called Red Eyes Take Warning. And As a result, she decided to stick with that name, as before the Overly Sarcastic Productions didn't really have its iconic name until much later, and I wanted to do my own take on borrowing elements of TV tropes as well. And well, I don't want to copy Over the Sarcastic Productions, but I do admire how they're also willing to use TV tropes as well. Overall, I would say that TV tropes is actually a very valuable site where it not only provides information regarding like both entertainment and education, but I feel like it has a better understanding of how story writing goes, especially regarding the plot or the lore and mythos of certain stories that occur. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Right. Overall, I would rate it, you could say, a 10 out of 10 regarding that kind of stuff. And I would most definitely use it as a way for me to continue writing or at least gain some kind of inspiration for my story writing.